This year's college football playoff was full of surprises and things we've never seen before. While semifinal games were incredible, the national championship did not live up to the hype. Welcome into Penn State Sports Night. I'm John Colavita alongside Josh Bartosik and Kylie Barton for your college football playoff recap. The two bowls in the playoff this season were the Peach Bowl and the Fiesta Bowl. Number 3 TCU got past 7.5-point favorite number 2 Michigan in the Fiesta Bowl. In the Peach Bowl, number 4 Ohio State fell after missing a last-second field goal at the stroke of midnight as top-seeded Georgia advanced. Georgia blew out TCU in the final in what would prove not to be only the most lopsided victory in a championship game, but the largest win in any bowl game ever. There's a lot to unpack with these games, but let's start with the Fiesta Bowl. Kylie, what is something that you want to talk about here? We're talking about the Fiesta Bowl between Michigan and TCU.
You had two teams that were coming in that were really trying to prove themselves. Michigan, I think, was very underrated at the beginning of the season, and I think surprised a lot of people throughout this season. You also had TCU, who surprised basically everybody, and as everybody was calling it their storybook ending, they were trying to finish that off. And you had Michigan's J.J. McCarthy, who threw for 118 more yards than TCU's Max Duggan. Now, both ended with 2 interceptions, but I think the biggest differences that we see in stats here are in passing yards and then rushing yards, where TCU takes it with 77. But the biggest influencer for this game was TCU's defense. They had 16 tackles for loss and then 4 sacks. You also had 2 interceptions that were pick sixes, one by Bud Clark and one by D. Winters. Now you also had TCU's 5 touchdown drives, each that took less than a minute to get. And those, I think, were definitely 2 of the biggest things. Now, this was also the highest scoring Fiesta Bowl ever, and it was the second highest scoring college ball playoff game, which I think says a lot. Now, I will give Michigan credit. They did not get lucky with this game. You had 2 touchdowns that were overturned, and only one ended up resulting in a touchdown. The other was a fumble that was recovered by TCU. And you had that pretty questionable call there at the end that was ruled as not targeting. I think a lot of jaws dropped in that moment. But, I mean, it was such an exciting game to watch that really left you on your toes till the end.
Yeah, I mean, look, I know we're going to mention it a lot in today's segment, but this was probably easily the best college football playoff semifinals I think we've ever seen. I think a lot of people came into this game and were like, oh, Michigan's going to steamroll TCU because TCU's at the Big 12 and no one really cares about the Big 12. Well, they proved everybody wrong. They had a fantastic game, like you mentioned. Talk about that TCU defense and just, even though you mentioned that TCU defense and how well they played, they still gave up 45 points but came away with a win, which is really impressive. And you talk about Michigan being unlucky. While there is a lot of questionable, decisions with whether that Roman Wilson touchdown was a touchdown or not, you can't follow it up by fumbling on the half-yard line. That's just not smart plays. Yes, technically you could say that the refs kind of, didn't really play in Michigan's favor, but the Wolverines also beat themselves a lot in this game. Did at the end, they just could not do it. There's a chance with about 12 minutes left in the fourth quarter. Quentin Johnson caught a 3-yard outright on a 3rd and 8, and all of a sudden, the one guy that had a chance to tackle him didn't, and then he turned into about an 80-yard touchdown. So that really kind of sealed the deal for the Wolverines, who just could not mount that comeback. And the clock's ticking for Harbaugh and his Wolverines. They've been back-to-back college football playoffs and both disappointing results. Obviously, last year they played Georgia. No one really expected them to beat Georgia, but not the result you want. And now a lot of questions going into next season for the Maize and Blue.
Kylie, I got to agree with you there. The pick sixes were really the turning point in the game for TCU, but you guys got to wonder, what would have happened if Blake Corum had actually played? The Heisman frontrunner towards the beginning of the season, he wasn't able to play. Blake Corum, I think, definitely could have turned the tide for the Wolverines, but guys, that was a great way to start off New Year's Eve, but the real highlight of the night was the Peach Bowl between Ohio State and Georgia. Josh, I'll start with you. Where did that game go wrong for Ohio State?
Well, I like how you mentioned that the first game wasn't even the best one that we saw tonight because both of these games were absolutely incredible. Ohio State jumped out to a really early lead, similar to how TCU did in their game, but then they just faltered near the end of the half and then retook the lead with about 40 seconds left. And it really felt like one of those games where the last team to have the ball was going to win. And it looked like that was going to be the case. Georgia scored with about 50 seconds left. You saw Stetson Bennett look up at the scoreboard. It looked like, I gave C.J. Stroud too much time. And Stroud did what he does best. He drove the Buckeyes down the field. However, they didn't get far enough because, yes, a lot of people are going to talk about that Ruggles missed field goal, and it was pretty bad. It was absolutely shanked. But you really can't expect a 20-something-year-old kid in one of the biggest games on national television to hit a 50-yarder. That's not an easy kick. You have professional NFL kickers that miss that kick all the time. No one gives them any crap for it. So unfortunate for Ohio State. It's really been just an unfortunate string. in the college football playoff and just in college football in general. Ohio State gets so close, but yet never close enough, it seems like, in these past few years. And this really seemed like their chance. Now with C.J. Stroud leaving for the draft, too, it's going to be very tough. But Georgia barely escaped. And, I mean, we're going to talk about it later the national championship. They really did not miss at all in that final game.
Yeah, I think, like, everyone going in, people thought that Georgia was going to take this without much of a problem. And yes, they did take it in the end, but boy, Ohio State did not make it easy. C.J. Stroud and Stetson Bennett both had phenomenal games. Both were in the high 300s on passing yards. But you also had, for Ohio State's offense, you had Emeka Egbuka and Marvin Harrison Jr., who got a combination of 218 yards and were responsible for over 50% of the team's receiving. Now, Harrison Jr. getting hurt late in the third quarter from what I think should have been a targeting call in the end zone, and he was officially out after, really hurt the Ohio State's offense, and I think that that's when things started to go downhill. Now, you had Georgia that ended with 398 receiving yards, which I just truly think is incredible. But for me, too, the thing that stood out the most was the kicking for both teams. You had Georgia's Jack Paluzny, who went 2 for 4, one miss in the first and then the third quarter. But then, of course, you had Ohio State's Noah Ruggles, who went 2 for 3. And, of course, that miss being the most important one, the last 3 seconds on the 50-yard line. And when you saw it, your heart breaks for the guy. I'm sure his life back in Columbus has not been easy for him. But I have full confidence that Stroud will go pretty early in the draft. And I just think to me, this was the national championship. This was one of the best and most exciting games of this season.
Speaking from a selfish vantage point, that game for C.J. Stroud was kind of the best he could do in moving himself up in the draft. He had a spectacular game, didn't advance, which means he couldn't get hurt in the national championship. But Georgia Stetson Bennett, he may have cemented himself as one of the best, if not like one of the most legendary college football quarterbacks of all time. Unfortunately, he actually can't get into the College Football Hall of Fame because you have to be an All-American to get in there. But this national championship, it didn't live up to the hype whatsoever. I think most people turned it off around halftime, 65-7, the final score. I mean, Kylie, what went wrong for TCU? What happened in that game?
I'll tell you what, TCU really brought something new and exciting to this season of college football. It's something that we really haven't seen before. And all of a sudden, you had this small private school from Texas in the College Football National Championship, which I think blew a lot of people away. They blew expectations out of the water. And I definitely think that I look at Georgia the same way that I look at Alabama. When you have someone new win, it's exciting, it's fresh, like there's a different hype around it. When you have the same winner multiple times, it's not as interesting and you tend to get tired of it. The only people that enjoyed watching Alabama win all those years were Alabama fans. And I'll tell you what, I loved getting to see them get knocked down a peg this season. But the fact that this was the biggest point difference in college football history. And you had Georgia setting the record for total points and most consecutive points with 55 after TCU's singular touchdown in the first quarter. Now, I'm sure that's not how TCU wanted to end the season, but I have to congratulate both teams. And I think that everything that happened in this game proved that Georgia earned this repeat. But it truly was something that we've never seen before.
I mean, yeah, look, going into this game, I think a lot of people obviously had Georgia to win this game. Everyone loves a, Cinderella story, but unfortunately in college football, that's not really how things work out. When you have a team that's stacked to the brim with 5-star, 4-star recruits versus a team that just really wasn't supposed to be there, this is kind of what you see happen. However, I will say that although that national championship was pretty boring after that first quarter, I think we can all admit within the first 5-7 minutes, it kind of became a snooze fest. I think this college football season as a whole really proved that the 12-team format that we're going to be getting in a couple of years is probably for the best. I mean, there were so many deserving teams, it felt like, to make it. It seemed like besides Georgia, the parity seemed pretty good in those top 8, top 10 teams. Obviously, Georgia was just unbelievably stacked. I mean, we saw it. Again, we don't know what would happen if Ohio State had, however, advanced with that missed field goal, but that's neither here nor there. We can't keep harping on the past. I know that Ruggles is not doing that, but overall, this was still a very successful college football playoff, I would say. I think even despite how lopsided that national championship was, given this is the first semifinals that we've had both be one-score games, I think you can still call this one of the most successful college football playoffs, if not the most successful.
Josh, you said it. You gotta love the parity. You finally see a fun team in the college football playoff, a team from the Big 12 finally advancing. But the SEC comes out again. If you look at Georgia's schedule for next year, they don't run into LSU, they don't run into Alabama. Their toughest game is going to be Tennessee in late November. on the road, that's pretty much it. Georgia has a really good chance to three-peat. As this year's college football season officially comes to a close, Stetson Bennett, Max Duggan, and C.J. Stroud are all headed to the NFL draft, while J.J. McCarthy looks to finally bring the Michigan Wolverines to the promised land. The 2023 college football season is a little too far away to start making educated speculations, but one thing is for sure, we'll be here to cover it. For Josh Bartosik and Kylie Barton, I'm John Colavita, and thanks for watching Penn State Sports Night.
Hey everybody, thank you for tuning into this edition of Penn State Sports Night. We hope you liked that segment.
And we're sure there's other Penn State Sports Night segments that you are going to love as well. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more content.
And check us out on social media for updates and behind-the-scenes clips and pics. Follow us on Twitter at PSSN TV and on Instagram at PSU Sports Night to keep up with all the action.
For all of us here at the Belisari Media Center, we are
Penn State Sports Night.